The end of the year affects me as sentimentally as most of us. Even though I am perfectly aware that a date is a construct, a commonly accepted convention, I still am falling under the magic of the new beginning. That power of a new year symbolizing a clean slate on which we can draw ourselves anew is not something unsubstantiated. There's a psychology playing tricks on us here. We tend to be stronger in our resolutions when we connect them with some benchmark. Studies have shown that even Monday, as a beginning of a week, is a benchmark good enough. That magical belief we share gives us even bigger push at the beginning of the year. To make it last is a completely different matter, but on that a bit later. I spent the last few days of 2019 and the beginning of 2020 in Lisbon, Portugal, where wandering around the city I came across the Livraria Ler Devagar, which translates from Portuguese as slow reading bookstore. That was a brilliant coincidence, and let me explain why. Over the last 2 years, I focused on building my morning habits with an overarching goal of improving my mental well-being. And it did help. My days start great, and so is my mood. However, with every hour passing, the mood declines. And the main reason is that I don't have such a strong control over my day as I have over my mornings. Of course, I will never be able to control everything, but I can definitely improve the control over myself. Therefore, in 2020, I want to focus on building other habits, incorporating them into my day, so I have the same feeling of accomplishment in the evenings that I have in the mornings. And that's a topic, obviously, for the whole another video. And there will be other videos, but I need to start somewhere. And since reading is such an essential element of who I am, how I identify myself, I wanted to start here. Also, because of it being such an essential element of my life, reading is also a space where a lot of problems I want to work on are exposed. But let's start from the beginning. For those of you that are new here and haven't realized yet that there's a lot of videos about books, I will just introduce myself. Hi guys, I'm Kamil and reading is the thing I do. I read on average 75 books a year since I started tracking it 6 years ago. Those 75 books come on top of my quite successful career demanding 50 hours of work per week, sometimes more, quite regular fitness routine, and a private life with my family, friends, and long-lasting relationship I care about. I'm not saying this to brag, as this could be repeated by pretty much every adult reader. It's just to underline that you don't have to spend all day on your couch reading books to read 70 books a year. Yet, regardless of those 75 books, here I am coming with this New Year's resolution, talking about how I want to read better. The title, How to Read Better, refers as much to me as to anybody looking for an advice. In this video, I will talk about what I want to change in terms of my reading life, but I will also talk about how I read, so definitely there are some tips to pick up too. If you want to read more regularly, you might be scratching your head thinking, what do you mean by better? It's already 75 books a year. So by better, I do mean better, not more. The number doesn't really matter as long as it's above my threshold, which for me is 50 books per year. How I plan on reading better? Before we get there, let me start by explaining who I am. I come from quite a humble background, family-wise. My family was very modest, and I believe as soon as I started earning more than I needed to cover my essential needs, the philosophy of more is better affected a lot of things I did. The constant chase for more, and more becoming synonymous with better. That was pretty much my life. We often, somewhere in our life, fall into that rabbit hole before we realize more doesn't make one feel happier. There were periods when my life was changing rapidly. Career-wise, I was reaching for positions I always thought I wanted and never dreamt it could happen so quickly. In addition to that, I was traveling vigorously and to places that when I was younger, I only in the most secret of dreams was dreaming about. Yet somehow, even though I was getting there, I was getting the things I wanted. In my everyday life, I was not the definition of happiness, to put it mildly. You know, whenever the journey was over, whenever the hit of adrenaline related to achieving another professional goal was over, I was getting back to my everyday life and I was feeling stressed and anxious for no logical reason. But as we all know, those things don't follow the rules of logic. It's all in here. Therefore, over the last 2 years, I focused on the element that needed the most immediate attention: mental clarity and peace. Since the beginning of 2018, I tried and failed to build some structure into my days, hoping that those morning routines, that control I tried to exercise over my thoughts and my body in the early mornings, will build up and help me create the space between the word and my reaction to it. And it did. But there's the rest of the day that needs a lot of working too. And the time is now. How reading comes into it all? This year is the year when I want to focus on the rambunctious more. Reading, the essential element of my life, exposes that chase after more and more, ideally. I feel like I'm in constant lookout for the next great book, instead of finding contentment with what I already have, within my immediate reach, and using that to learn and grow. The change always needs to start with you. It's you and the work you put into achieving something that matters. The tools are much less important. For instance, if you want to learn a new language, instead of spending weeks choosing apps to do it with, finding online courses and becoming disillusioned with them, maybe just crack open that old book you already have and put 20 minutes of study a day, and only after you are done with that book, look for another tool. Sure, tools are relevant, but we tend to overvalue the form, while it's always the substance, the work that creates the change. How that refers to me? There are so many fantastic books sitting on my shelves that I am still excited about, but those have no chance, as every year, except for the last 2, I was buying twice as much as I was able to read. Over the last 6-7 years, I bought around 1,000 books. Yes, 1,000 books. As mentioned already, I read with a pace of circa 75 books a year, so after multiplying it by 6, we have around 450 read books, therefore estimating around 550 out of 1,000 are still unread. And that number is not even something I'm overwhelmed with. My running joke is that I need to build a library for my retirement. The issue is that I see it as a symptom of a bigger problem, and the one I want to focus on this year. I want to stop chasing, just stop. I want to stand still and breathe, and find a contentment in the things I have, and use them to grow and develop, methodically, without distractions, to create a space where I have time to decide what my next step will be, where it will lead. Therefore, this year, I want to focus on reading carefully, reading what I have, picking better quality books, the books I own, the ones that I always wanted to read but never got to because I let myself be distracted by an unending, unfocused chase after something new. Being in Lisbon, walking around the area where Libreria Ler Devagar is located, I was thinking about the way I will set up the reading rules for my 2020. I know I need to be reasonable with my plans, as the most important thing I learned over the last 2 years is that it's always better to start small and grow on that. I used to have problems, for instance, with waking up regularly at 7 every day. Now, during the work week, I wake up at 5 to 5:30 and it's no longer such a struggle. But I didn't go straight to 5 when I started. It took time. Also, the goal should never be a punishment in disguise. So I've created a bit of room for the new books too. So let me explain how I will do it. I made a list of 35 physical novels that I own and I wanted to read, and I will make this year the year when it will happen. Okay? Some of those books are classics I never got around to, some of them are novels by my favorite writers, or the writers I read and love one book by, and because of that I bought the second book and never got around to reading it. There are also some big titles from the last few years that I want to get to. Also, I made a second list of 25 non-fiction books that I own and I want to read. The ones that I might be even more excited than about the novels that I just mentioned. If you did your math, this is 60 books we are talking about, and I leave myself a margin of error that I will be fine with, and that margin is 10, which means that I need to finish the year with 50 books crossed out from those lists. I read mostly during weekends and holidays and around an hour every day in bed before I fall asleep. But during the work week, I made it a rule to read for 30 minutes immediately when I'm done with work, be it in the office or just after coming back home. Now about the little room of one's own. For the new books I mentioned earlier. While I run, I listen to audiobooks, and I run on average 4 out of 5 mornings during the work week, and then at least one longer run during weekends. And while running, I listen to script audiobooks. I also use Script app on my iPhone for ebooks, and with a huge effort I try to control myself to read from my phone when I'm having lunch or I'm waiting in a queue, instead of scrolling through social media. It doesn't work every single time, but it does work most of the time. And that's a tip if you want to lower your pointless time on the phone. Install a reading app. Then there are literary awards that I follow, and that gives me a huge joy that I don't want to cut out from my life, but I need to impose some restrictions here. So we are talking only about Booker Prize and Pulitzer this year. And to read those books, I can either use my Script subscription, or as the second resort, I will ask publishers for sending me a copy for a review. The bottom line is I cannot buy those books. And if none of those options work, I will simply not read that book. There are bigger tragedies than that, right? You are probably thinking, why wouldn't you use the library? I don't live in the English-speaking country, and my libraries would not have those books, at least for a year or more after they are published. Okay? So that's the reason why. That brings us to the last small exception, as I don't want to end up with the world where I have only Amazon and Book Depository, owned by Amazon anyway, to buy books from. Therefore, when I'm traveling, I can buy one book per travel from an independent bookstore. However, as impulsive buying is something I try to control in every single field, the book to buy from that independent bookstore needs to be something I was thinking about reading for a couple of weeks already. That is exactly what I did in Libreria Ler Devagar, where I bought one book, and it was Austerlitz by Sebold. It was the book that I wanted to read since I recorded a video where I discussed Guardian, the 100 best books of 21st century. Okay guys, that's it. Please let me know if you have any New Year reading resolutions. And also, if you like this video, please subscribe or consider subscribing, as it always helps. Or leave a comment down in the box below. Have a brilliant day. Bye bye.